Tell me when.
Don't suck it.
Go.
It was May again. Dreams of playing and having fun danced through my head. Like a dream, I felt happy again. Flowers were blossoming, and the smell of roses tingled through my senses. Birds chirped in the distance, singing happily with no care in the world. Suddenly, I was startled by reality knocking my front door down. A blue man, formerly known as a policeman, stood in the doorway with a gun, pointed at me.
Pack up your things. You have 3 minutes, he demanded.
I froze, not knowing what to do.
Now!
He screamed, shoving the gun in my face. I ran through the shack we called home. It had one small bedroom, one bathroom, and a tiny kitchen with a sink, a miniature fridge, and a broken stove. I ran into my little sister's room and helped pack her things as she trembled to me. My mom and dad had been taken by the government 3 months before, so I've been watching out for her ever since. Once we packed a change of clothes, and the one family photo, the blue man herded us into the back of a dank trunk. A dank trunk. The stench of mold filled the air. Kids of all ages shuddered in the corners, terrified, and not knowing where we would end up. After 4 long days of no sleep, no food, no water, we arrived at a factory of some sort. There were buildings scattered randomly throughout the facility. All looked as if they were abandoned for years. A blue man opened the back of the truck and pulled us out. When we got out, he asked for ID papers. As I reached in my back pocket, I couldn't focus on anything but the blue man standing in front of me. His eyes were swimming with pain. On his face, there was a scar, stretching from his left eyebrow to the corner of his mouth, forcing a permanent scowl. He looked miserable, almost robotic. He grabbed my ID paper. "I'm a number 2, I announced with an ounce of pain. Everyone here has ID papers. It's the way the government keeps things in order. And a person's wealth status. Status of wealth. They give us just one number from 1 to 10. If you have a 1, you live in poverty. If you have a 10, you're rich. Rich. Like Bill Gates. At least according to the government. He handed my ID papers back and pushed me into a sea of people, all shaken and confused. A man in the front of the crowd with a bright red shirt, who was clearly different from everyone else, started yelling out names. "Jeff Molin," he announced. A man from the crowd walked forward and stood by the man in the red shirt. "Jessica Moore," he yelled. That was my sister. She tightened her grip on my arm and froze. Fortunately, my name followed shortly after. We walked slowly to the growing blob of people. People that looked like a blob, standing next to the man in the red. Once the group of people surrounding me grew to about 20, the man in the red led us to our new home. It was a tiny 10-foot by 15-foot room with bunk beds lining the walls. 20 people are supposed to live here. I thought to myself, before we get settled, the man in the red told us all to pile our belongings outside the little building we would now call home. A pickup was parked outside with suitcases and bags piled 5 feet high in the back. Right then I saw the man in the red grab clothes out of the trunk. They were all blue. He handed each of us a pair of pants, a shirt, and then loaded our things into the back of the trunk. I never saw my belongings again. I picked Jessica up and carried her inside. We walked to the very back and made our way to the top bunk of the beds. There were no pillows and one thin blanket not big enough to cover a grown adult. I gently covered Jessica as much as I could and held her in my arms, trying to be comforting as I could. Minutes later, we fell asleep.
"Wake up!"
A blue man yelled. We all sat up exhausted and afraid.
"You will all be led to the cafeteria where you eat and get to work. You will all be assigned to a number 6. You will do as they tell you to bear the consequences,"
he said as he patted the little pistol on his hip.
"At 4:00 p.m. you will eat dinner and get back to work. Then at 12 a.m. it will be lights out."
I'm not on the list. There was a
You
list.
had to be on the list.
Yeah.
I thought you just dropped into. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Back to the story. Then at 12 a.m. it will be lights out.
"Tomorrow with your day start at 5:00 a.m. and you will have the same schedule. Let's go!"
Suddenly he was Asian.
That cloudy May afternoon 20 years ago was the last time I saw my sister. after we had eaten the moldy, stale piece of bread they call breakfast. My sister and I were led into the factory. The air inside made it feel as though my lungs wouldn't stop working. Or would stop working. Either way, it was horrible. A group of men walked past smiling and laughing. In front of the men was the man in red from the day before. As his attention went from laughter to my sister and me, it was like I could see the happiness on his face washed away by misery and pain.
You, it's a girl!
The man in the red yelled as he pointed at Jessica. He hesitated and looked away with shame written on his face.
Come with me!
He demanded. Jessica took a step forward, still glued to my arm. I'm sorry, but you need to come with me. The man in the red whispered, suddenly going from bad guy to comforting man. Jessica slowly and unwillingly let go of my arm. Everything will be okay, he said, now quieter than ever. He yelled out his courageously, and Jessica grabbed it as she looked back at me. Tears poured down her cheeks. It will be okay, I assured her, afraid of what would happen to her if she didn't go. Nothing is going to happen. I bent down and gave her a hug. I love you, I whispered in her ear. As I let go, the man in the red took her away, walking hand in hand to God knows where. I never saw her again. Is she alive? Is she happy? Did she get to marry? Have children? I will never know. It's May again, in 2040. I now live in a world of identical people. Everything is so square and plain. My world is filled with black and white. Nothing is abstract or out of the ordinary. Nothing is courageous enough to stand out. But today, this cloudy May afternoon is different. 20 years ago, the man in the red changed my life. I walked over to my closet, pulled out the one only colored shirt I owned and put it on. I looked in the mirror, saw nothing but a woman in red. Yes, I am a woman. Maybe I can change someone's life too, I said to myself as I walked out my front door to face the day.
And this ends our session of Holocaust in the future.